So I was going to make a political style video earlier, and then it dawned on me I should probably talk to my subscribers about why I don't make Game of Thrones videos anymore. After all, probably 3/4 of my subscribers are here for Game of Thrones. Not that I have a lot of subscribers, but I do appreciate everyone I get. I'm a very, very small-time YouTuber. I realize this. So I recorded an actual 14-minute audio file that I was going to just drag some pictures onto, explaining my 5 reasons for no longer making Game of Thrones videos, when I said, you know what? Let's just make more Game of Thrones videos. I don't hate the show because season 8 was so bad. So I said, well, what can I do to give myself at least a different take on things? But you know what I'm going to do, and it might have already been done, I don't know. I'm going to review the reviews. I watch people who are still to this day, like every single day, still making Game of Thrones reviews, season recaps and what they didn't like about certain seasons and how bad season 8 was, etc. I am going to start a series called Game of Thrones, Reviewing the Review. And I'm holding myself to 3 rules here when I do this. 1, no rudeness, throwing shade by insulting the creators, etc. It's not about that. We both have opinions. Nobody's got a right opinion or a wrong opinion. Oh, they might have a right or wrong opinion. I don't know, but I'm not the one that's going to make that call. My opinions might suck compared to theirs. Rule number 2, I'm never going to monetize this content. It probably is not going to take off because I'm not a very good YouTuber. I'll freely admit that. But in case it does, I'll never monetize it. I'm never going to monetize someone else's content. I wouldn't do that. And rule number 3, I'm only ever going to punch up. I'm going to punch up at people who have big audiences and get a lot of views. You know why? Because I'm coming for you. Anyways, these are all going to be 100% fair use. The epitome of fair use. What is fair use? For the purposes of review and critique, that is obviously 100% what these are for. I'm not going to take them out of context, anything. I'm going to watch the reviews and I'm going to pause it and I'm going to talk when I want to critique their critique. And if they want to go and flag me for that, copyright strike me for that, you know, I guess I'll just have to battle back with them with an appeal, because this is quite literally for purposes of review and critique, and it's not monetized. It is essentially why fair use was created. So we're going to get into it right now. No more further preamble. Just real quick before I dive in and get started here, these are going to be probably very long videos, like that Mauler with his Rages videos. I've watched like 10 minutes of a couple before, but he does like 3-hour videos. These are going to be pretty long. Also, I'm going to find videos that I've never seen before. This one I've seen, it's got a whole lot of views. I just typed in some keywords and then clicked, one with the most views. Like I said, I want to punch up here. This is damn near 5 million views, 4.9 million views. So if this gets out that I'm criticizing this dude or agreeing with this dude, and I don't know if that's how it's going to go. This is what I want to do, review the reviews. I might agree with everything they say. And then I'm like, hey, I like this review. I might disagree with some of what they say. Might be, I don't know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Let's see how this goes. Like I say, I haven't watched it before. I don't know what we're in for. This is a long video, so if I stop to give critique on this thing, man, this is 100% fair use. If somebody wants to strike this down, it is what it is, I guess. But this should be the exact purpose of fair use. Let me make sure I got nothing in the way here, and let's play it.
So Game of Thrones just ended, and if we're being honest, it kinda sucked. Despite what you may think by looking at the title of this video, I actually used to like this show. I read the first book back in middle school, which I definitely should not have been allowed to do. Then I started...
I don't doubt. Always. I mean, sometimes you gotta press X to doubt. But it's just, isn't it so convenient that everybody who makes these videos was such a fan of the books? I remember YouTube being a thing before Game of Thrones came out in 2011. I remember YouTube. Have you ever seen anything, any material at all about A Song of Ice and Fire? Yet every single Game of Thrones YouTuber will swear up and down that they've been these huge fans of the books long before they even ever had HBO at home. They were just huge fans of the books. Some people, I'm sure, were. But I mean, come on, man. Come on. What they tend to do is use these books as evidence that they have a right to be angry. Some of these videos I've seen before. I don't know this guy. This is the Cosmonaut Variety Hour. He might be a great guy and he might be telling the truth and he might not be doing this just to monetize the outrage market. But come on, man. I've read these books back in middle school. Is that you, bro? Is that you?
Started the fourth book before I realized that I was making a mistake. The books didn't really have numbers on them back then, and I got confused, alright? But the point is that was a long time ago, and I never could have anticipated back then that these nerdy-ass books would spawn the most popular show ever. I mean, it's so popular that Elmo even. I think this show is definitely a step above other shows of its type. I mean, think about it. How many fantasy shows even come close to the quality of Game of Thrones? But the problem...
How many fantasy shows are there? I used to be a Game of Thrones YouTuber. I never got popular, and I've long since stopped making the videos because I don't really like the fantasy elements in this show. I cringed so hard when they brought dragons into the show. I don't know how many other fantasy shows there were. I watched shows like Oz and The Sopranos, and I'm not saying that like, oh my God, I'm such a tough guy. It's just I never really, when I was a kid, my father was an all-state quarterback. So, you know, of course, what does he want to push his son into? Sports. He would have ripped a comic book out my hand and took me down to the baseball field and shot baseballs at my body from a pitching machine till I hit them. That's just the kind of childhood I had growing up. So I never really got into the fantasy stuff.
This show really dropped the ball. Like, it really screwed up.
Have you shot your final scenes yet? And are you...
Did the show screw up, or are people just mad that it's Dan and Dave's material and not from the source material? Because I've seen a lot of that before, that people really want to read the books and then so they can know what's supposed to happen in the show and then go back to see how well that matched up and then get outraged if the shows didn't match the books because they crammed all the books in that they could from season 1 to season 3 just so they'd be set up so they could set up fake reactions for the Red Wedding and stuff like that. I mean, man, the world's so fake and gay. Let's not pretend it's not.
You happy with how things ended?
Yeah.
She didn't say yes. You didn't say yes.
Best season ever.
I'm going to be skipping a whole lot of this stuff, I guess, because when they're not talking about the show, I don't want to show the people's whole damn videos on here. I'm not out to steal their intellectual property. I'm just trying to offer a review and critique of it.
It's the best. It's the best season ever.
This show fell victim to something I always warn about. Bad writing. I talk about bad writing in like every video I've ever made. And now that we've all seen the finale of this show, I hope you realize why writing is important. Because this show has pretty good acting, some pretty good cinematography, incredibly impressive effects, moments of really fun editing, and yet everybody is mad because the writing is bad. And honestly, that's the only thing wrong with this show. But
was the writing bad in that scene where she takes her revenge on the sand snakes and kisses her daughter the same way her daughter was kissed? I thought that was an awesome scene. I thought what was stupid about it is we don't know what happened after that. That's the last we ever saw of them. Did Bad Pussy have some antidote hidden in her coochie? Is that why she called it Bad Pussy? I don't know. Did they really go down there and force food in her throat? I thought that would have been interesting to keep following up on, but I don't think this had anything to do with bad writing. I think introducing the Dornish characters, other than Oberyn, didn't work out well for anybody anyways, but I particularly liked this scene.
So bad that it really makes it hard to appreciate the rest of the stuff. You know how many movies or shows are saved by having good writing? Hell, it's the only reason Woody Allen still has a career. If you watch
I probably am not going to like this dude if he's going to big up Woody Allen. Woody Allen is the fucking... him and Roman Polanski are fighting over who's the bigger fucking creep.
of Thrones all the way through from beginning to end, it feels like everything that was important at first just kind of gets thrown away. The show just morphs into something bizarre. The themes and ideas that were once important are now completely gone and replaced with more generic fantasy tropes.
I'll take your word on the fantasy tropes because I don't really watch fantasy, but this complaint of, oh, the show isn't what it used to be. Just watch season 1 through 4 or whatever y'all claim to like over and over and over and over again. It has to progress. If you want to say that the progression of it is bad and something you don't agree with, fine, and I agree. But if you're just mad that it's not the same as it used to be because it progressed to something different, what's the point of watching a show then? It has to. Like, one of the biggest complaints I've heard about this is how in season 7 and 8 and they bring everybody together. That was always going to be the trajectory. I've never read the book, but I guarantee you when The Winds of Winter or I Dream of Spring come out, whatever those books are supposed to be called, that they're going to bring everybody together because the army of the dead is going to attack there too, right? And they're going to have to bring everybody together into the same setting. So I don't understand this particular criticism of the show. I really don't.
Just don't feel right anymore, and I'm not the only one who thinks that.
Let me appeal to popularity. I guess it works when you get 5 million views on your channel that you can appeal to popularity. You can crowdsource people who agree with you.
Let's take a look at why. Oh, and by the way, if it wasn't obvious,
I thought I had long lead-ins to my videos.
Now, if you're a weirdo who's never watched Game of Thrones because you don't mind missing out on cultural media milestones, I'll explain the general premise for you.
Stop calling this shit culture. Stop calling TV shows culture and taco recipes culture and hairstyles culture and clothing culture. Culture was originally defined by physical anthropology in the same vein as a biological culture, which is expressly growth in a defined medium. It's not that easily mutable. Things that are easily mutable have a name. They're pop culture. Trying to make a pop sound with my mouth here. Pop culture. Pop up, pop down, pop goes the weasel. This shit isn't culture. If culture is so easily mutable, because this show will be forgotten in time, I would argue that if The Sopranos came out in 2011 and Game of Thrones came out in 1998, then they would have had reversed fortunes anyways. You could flip-flop their fortunes. And The Sopranos would have been the big cultural sensation. This is in the age explicitly of social media and shit. YouTube channels where you can just make a video like this about Game of Thrones and get 5 million views. But this stuff isn't culture. If culture means everything that's so meaningless, then culture means nothing. That's just my minor hang-up quibble. That's not really a critique of his review there. I just hate people who call this shit culture. Don't be fooled by how the definitions change. Go type in dictionary.com tolerance and see what the first 4 definitions are that come up. They change definitions of words every year, and it just gets on my damn nerves.
The story revolves around a bunch of families in the land of Westeros. Westeros is a fantasy land with dragons and magic, but dragons and magic are pretty rare. The aforementioned families are all fighting one another because shit happens and the king dies.
I really didn't like the dragons and magic aspect of it. I liked Sean Bean and the political intrigue. That's what drew me into the show. Then once I became a fan of the show, I kind of suffered silently through the magic and saw all of these big channels who loved that. Loved that there was dragons in there. Loved that there was magic in there. Oddly enough, I don't know if he'll touch on this or not, but I've seen reviews of people who hated the magic after season 5 was over. And my working hypothesis, my working postulate, is that people act butthurt because they don't have the source material to go back and check for themselves or to spoil it for themselves. Hipster style.
And it's a series about political intrigue, realistic complex characters, and boobs. However, most of these concepts kind of get fucked up by the end of the series. It kind of stops being a show about characters and politics. Characters used to get by on their wit and
At some point, insofar as the army of the dead was coming down, and that's the biggest existential threat for all of Westeros, Essos, all of mankind, it was always going to get away from that. Always. And there's probably always going to be complaints about it getting away from that. Even if George R.R. Martin came in and personally did it. At some point, that had to be... I think that's why, in my personal opinion, I could well be wrong here, I think that's why Dan and Dave got dispatched of the Army of the Dead in episode 3 of the last season so they could get back to the political intrigue, even though it wasn't that intriguing, because they were trying to appease two groups of fans here. They were trying to appease the longtime fans of the show, who kind of got cast aside for the SJW come lately fans of the show, who would bitch and moan and complain every episode about rape culture and white supremacy and all these bad things, and give them a bad name. And then HBO's been going that route anyway since it's sold to Time Warner, I think, and they've been getting a lot more SJW here, SJWE, I guess. They've been getting a lot more going down that road. And what we end up with is just a clusterfuck of SJW woke talking points throughout season 7, and especially in season 8. But it was always going to veer toward everybody coalescing and getting away from the political intrigue. I think Dan and Dave, I don't think they mailed the show in like so many do. I don't think they mailed the show in so they could quickly move on to something else. I think they tried too hard to appease the SJW come latelys who complain about it on social media, and they betrayed their fan base by doing that. They tried to make it badass to impress the SJWs and the reactionary crowd who stand around and scream and shout about the shocking events that they've known about for 8 fucking years, or through leaked scripts, etc. And they betrayed their original fan base, and tried to throw them a bone every once in a blue moon.
Activity, but now it's just fighting. Remember how I said magic and dragons were pretty rare? Well, not anymore. When the writers don't know what to do, we either get magic, a dragon, or a fight. And sometimes we get all three at once.
Hold on. They're still pretty rare. There are only 3 dragons in the entire show, and they've been there since the last episode of season 1. There have been dragons. In season 2, they were already Dracarysine motherfuckers. And as far as I know, Melisandre has only used the magic on 3 separate instances. The first, she birthed a smoke monster out her pussy. People complain that she touched swords and lit them up. They said, oh my god, what a weak plot device. Dan and Dave, they're so uncreative. Well, y'all's fucking hero god, George R.R. Martin, wrote that Stannis Baratheon pumped human DNA into her fucking womb and impregnated her. And then 2 minutes later, she was fully pregnant and gave birth to a fucking smoke monster out her snatch. That just went randomly. No direction. It just knew what to do to go kill Renly Baratheon with the approximate face of Stannis Baratheon. Stanley. And then just disappeared forever. There was no explanation of how that was created. There was no lead up in plot or good dialogue to tell Davos Seaworth where he was taking her or why. And she just birthed the smoke monster out her snatch that went and killed somebody and then fucked off. But no, let's talk more about she set swords on fire, because that's the more outlandish thing. That she can start fires. Not that she can give birth to a motherfucking spiritual ghost demon that murders people and then poofs out of existence. With no sit-up, no dialogue, no extra context after it was gone. Just people thinking Brianna Torth was crazy for saying she seen it. I seen it. Then the second time she used magic, or whatever, I believe, I could be well wrong on this, so people can yell at me in the comments and correct me. Homeboy can send his audience over here to dogpile me if he wants. I don't give a fuck. But I believe the second time she used it was to bring Jon Snow back, which everybody knew was going to fucking happen. That's why she came back there in the first place. And then in the third time, she caught shit on fire. Still rare. That's very rare. Is it not rare? Is that not rare? I don't think we saw Kavora do any magic. She kind of fucked with Varys about, would you like to know what the voice said? But that wasn't really any really magic. It's still rare. So what are you talking about? It's rare as fuck. And Dondarrion sets his sword on fire here too. So it's rare as hell. Who does that? 2 people. And he's been brought back to life, what does the Hound say, 19 times? And you don't hear him complaining about it.
And that's because the writers are not very good at writing this show.
So it's not good.
And yet,
when you can randomly set a piece of steel on fire. That's not good. But when you can birth the smoke monster out your pussy from 2 sets of human DNA, oh my God, do the soy boy jump up and down excited dance, because that's the fucking peak pinnacle of excellence. This is the bias that I alluded to earlier, between the shit that George R. R. Martin writes, which is considered holy canon and saintly, and you can't have anything bad to say against it, then the shit that Dan and Dave write. I'm shocked at this point that Dan and Dave don't cry anti-Semitism and get people blocked for complaining about them. Really, they have thick skin. They're both Jewish. They're not white folk. They're both Jewish. They both are Jewish. No, they're both Jewish. I'm shocked that they haven't said that complaining about their writing is another Shoah and had people banned for doing it. They have some thick skin to not do that.
Yes, I know that sounds a little weird, so I'm going to explain. The Song of Ice and Fire series is written by George R. R. Martin, and a good 80% of the show is adapted from these books, and about 75% of that is actually really good. Now, the show itself is written by David Benoff and D.B. Weiss, or as a lot of people like to call them, D&D. Now, for what it's worth, they are pretty good at adapting this material for the screen. They have a good way of cutting the unnecessary stuff, accentuating the important elements that might not be immediately important, and presenting it in a fresh and engaging way. Now, a lot of people shit on these guys because of the recent seasons, but let's not forget that the good stuff is partly their work too. So if these guys are pretty good at adapting...
I don't shit on them for their writing of the recent seasons, because like he's saying here, and I agree with him here, we also have to go back and look at and realize that, they adapted this shit into the screen too. And they cut out things that were unnecessary, and they set up pretty good shows. What I bash them for is catering to the woke mob. I don't think they phoned it in. I don't think they were anxious to get on that Star Wars shit, because they were still doing the Star Wars movies when this ended. I think Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams were still tied up in that shit. I'm not a big fan of the Star Wars either. I just know when I am a fan of channels like Nerdrotic and who's that dude who wears the mask and he talks like this and he's got some kind of I think it's bubcock or something like that. And so I hear them talk about it a lot. I don't really know. Yeah, I fault them for trying to cater to that small fringe of woke SJWs who fuss and complain and gripe and moan about stuff on Twitter, that everything's rape culture and white supremacy that Dan and Dave are doing. And like I said, and I'll probably bring it up a few more times, I'm shocked that Dan and Dave haven't shut all this shit down by claiming that it's anti-Semitism, because that is certainly within their power to do, as we see how Twitter and Facebook act.
Existing material, then what's the problem? Well, the problem is that around season 4 and 5, they ran out of books. See, unfortunately for them, the books aren't
finished. See what I'm talking about? Now, I'm not saying that I'm right about this dude. I don't know this dude at all. I've never seen any of his videos before. He's obviously a popular dude. He's got 5 million views on this. I might get 5 views and probably 4 dislikes on my video, and I'm fine with that. I don't monetize and won't monetize. Anyways, I have other ways of making money in my life. I salute to people who do this for money. But it seems like the biggest part of their hate for the latter seasons is that it wasn't the source material. And my working postulate on this is that people want to know what's going on. Some people want to be know-it-alls. I can't count how many people that I spoke to and that I know who never heard of the Song of Ice and Fire series, but fell in love with the first season or 2 of Game of Thrones and went out and got all them damn books on audio tape and then bought the paperbacks on sale from Amazon and every freaking thing else, and they crammed that shit, and they loved the thought of knowing approximately, at least, what was going to happen in the Red Wedding and Jon Snow at the end of the Dancing with Dragons and all of that. They loved that. They loved being know-it-alls. They loved being able to know approximately what was going to happen, and then seeing the reactions of people who didn't know and lord over them like, what? You didn't see that coming? I saw that coming. No, you didn't, motherfucker. You read it in the books, and that's why y'all are mad when they run out of the book source material, because y'all can't act like that anymore. Y'all don't have a leg to stand on now to lord over people.
And when they signed on to do the show, they probably thought the series would be over by then. But then we all found out the hard way that George R.R. Martin is kind of lazy. I mean, it's kind of hard to say that because you can't really get a read on the guy. I mean, think about it. What if the show was in like season 6, way after they're done adapting the books directly? Then he releases a book with completely different stuff in it. Who the fuck is gonna read it now when the show's still on? It would just be confusing to consume 2 stories named the same thing.
He kind of lends himself to what I'm saying here. If he's going to write stuff that's different from the show, who would want to read it then? Yeah, because then you wouldn't be able to lord over anybody with the knowledge that you have and get to pretend that you saw it coming the whole time. This is why a lot of people disliked my videos when I was making Game of Thrones anyways, because I threw shade on the book readers all the time. Because the book readers acted like if you didn't know 1-1 every single thing that happened in the books, that you weren't a real fan and you were stupid and you were gullible and you were the reason that all this bad stuff was happening in the show, pretending that they read the books when they were young or something. Maybe this dude did. Somebody did, because they were obviously relatively successful.
But with different shit happening. I think he knows that the show is like the most popular thing ever, and if he releases the book, it's just unnecessary competition. It's better to just do the books after the hype of the show has died down a bit. But either way, the point is that D&D ran out of books. They had a few tidbits from George, but that's about it. But outside of those few elements, the show just had to start making shit up. And these guys aren't really good at that.
All of it's made up. Martin made the shit up. All of it's made up. They tried to make the shit up within the universe. And for them not having written the source material, they didn't do a bad job really until we got into the ending, to the last act of it. Up until then, even though you could tell seasons were declining in quality a little bit, up until the very last season, people were still very highly engaged with the show. Some of the most popular episodes in history were them episode 7s that leaked early.
Once they started writing original content, we got some of the worst plot lines in Game of Thrones history.
Look,
we also
Dorne was just like a bad place with bad acting. That one chick, India Varma, whatever her name is, used to show her booba in HBO movies back when I was a teenager. So I'll love her forever for that. I had some great 2 in the mornings I'm supposed to be sleeping types of dates with her. But that Jaime Lannister felt he had to go to Dorne to save Marcella. They got a credible threat with her necklace on a viper. Of course he was going to go there to save her. That was Jaime's arc throughout the whole thing, is to set his pride aside for his family. All that he did to get back to Cersei, and all that he wants to do for Marcella to get her back. And Bronn coming along with him. Well, Bronn is the go-to man for the Lannisters since season 1, when he stood in for Tyrion at the Vale to fight. What was that guy's name that he fought? I don't know, but he didn't fight with honor. So I don't see what's the problem with that plot line. The acting and the writing for the Sand Snakes, I believe, was horrible. And if you were going to say that, I'll agree with you entirely.
Got some of the worst dialogue.
You want a good
A shame too, because she's a sexy chick.
Not to mention
Sexy little chick, and they pretty much threw her character away too. I don't think people have much of a problem with that, because her dialogue was so bad, and they just seemed out of place. They really did seem out of place. Now, if they had an actual force, like if Oberyn had a private army or something that was loyal to him, but just having random bastard daughters who they introduced into the story as basically Mary Sue's, until they met Euron, at least. Once they met Euron, and Euron's just, I guess, a Mark Sue. What's the male version?
Fight scenes also start popping up randomly to distract the viewer and fill up time. Game of Thrones.
Hey, I disagree with this entirely, but let him finish his point.
Thrones used to have like 1 fight a season, if you were lucky. But in the later seasons, it feels like fights just get added for no reason. Why doesn't he have a shirt on? This whole scenario...
I agree with him. Why doesn't he have a shirt on? But nobody cared when the Dothraki didn't wear shirts, just like nobody cared when Khal Drogo did what he did when he first met Dany, but everybody lost their minds when Ramsay did it to Sansa. But because Khal Drogo was sexy, y'all. That's how the world works. Attractive, the more attractive you are, the more leeway you get. But these fights weren't for no reason, dude. Dude, you got 166,000 upvotes here and 7,000 downvotes. I'm not going to upvote it or downvote it one way or another. I just want to review the review. But to say they happen for no reason, the Sons of the Harpy happened for a very obvious reason. They viewed Misa as the master, or at least that was their propagandizing from the masters to retake the slave trade, and they were a growing force that Danny poo-pooed. That was the kind of the theme throughout the end of season 4, I believe. Don't quote me on that. It might have been all contained in season 5. I just know it was in season 5 when it came to a head. That the Sons of the Harpy were a growing threat. It was just a dude hiding behind a wall who Dario Naharis found and explained to Grey Worm that since he's not scared, he wouldn't know anything about hiding. But then we seen in segments and increments, the Sons of the Harpy grow and grow and grow, and Danny ignoring the threat, she wouldn't let her Unsullied and her second sons go through the town and root them out. Root and stem? How do you say that? Tear them out, root and stem? I don't know. But she just wouldn't let them go around, kick ass, and take names. And then eventually backfired on her when they showed up and bum rushed Torgo Nudo and Barristan Selmy. That whole plot line was about Danny not taking things serious. And in the context of all of the seasons, that all the shows out now, the seasons stacked on one another, it also goes to show a little bit of Danny's character progression of why she starts blazing motherfuckers like the Tarleys. Why she just starts blazing them now, because she's not going to give things a chance to get out of her control again, because she let that happen before, and Grey Worm almost died, and Barristan Selmy did die. So that wasn't a fight for no reason. That had a very good reason to show Danny's lax leadership and her ruling, thinking that the people loved her for freeing them, when all the while there's this sinister force growing that wants to reclaim power from her, but she's not paying attention to it because she's overconfident with her hubris that she's got 3 dragons, and she's got the second sons, and she's got the Unsullied. And she thinks nobody's going to touch her, and then the Sons of the Harpy, a little guerrilla force, rises up and touches her in a bad way. There's a reason for those fights. There's a reason for Ramsay. Whether or not him not having a shirt on, I don't know any reason for that. But Yar goes to save Theon, who is a willing captive at this point, or brainwashed, or Stockholm Syndrome, or just too terrified to leave. He's nutless. I don't know, however you want to say it. But there's a reason that they come out and fight, because the Ironborn invaded the north there to get Theon back, who, for all intents and purposes, in their sort of system, Theon is now Ramsay's property. It's his boy. It's his house boy. There's reason for the fights. I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
It reminds me of Full Metal Alchemist, where the original anime ran out of manga to adapt, so they just started making shit up.
I will 100% take your word for anything manga or anime. I have no idea what that shit is. I've never watched it.
And it got pretty weird. Game of Thrones went the exact same way, except we don't have any books to show us what we're missing out on. But if you ask me...
Do you see what I'm talking about? Do you see what I'm talking about? Hey, this Game of Thrones here seems weird. What I require is the books to go back and look at to see if it matches up. Because as long as it's in the books, it's fine, right? But the bias here, what did I say? I've never seen this before in my life. I've never heard of this dude before in my life. I liked the video so far. I liked the video, and I've only disagreed with a couple of things from the video. He's obviously a popular YouTuber, over 1 million subscribers, 5 million views on this. So, you know, the dude knows what he's doing. I'm not throwing any shade, but the dude is basically proven true what I'm saying of why people cling to the book so hard, is because they want to go back and look at it through the lens of being a know-it-all. And now they want to confirm what's going on here with what's in the books. There wasn't anything wrong with this storyline here. Dario Naharis, the new Dario, and Jorah now with the grayscale. Here's the guy who's fucking Daenerys Targaryen. Here's the guy who's only wishing the world is to fuck Daenerys Targaryen. And Daenerys Targaryen flew off on Drogon after the Sons of the Harpy bum rushed the fighting pits in Meereen, and nobody knows where she went. Why wouldn't these two dudes go looking for her? You can say that Drogon flew her to Vaes Dothrak, It's kind of stupid and kind of convenient and kind of something that George R. R. Martin wouldn't do and that Dan and Dave did because they're not as good as writers. I will agree with that 100%. But that you're calling... Are you saying that this is a bad plot point that these two went looking for her? Of course they're going to go looking for her.
It's obvious.
Here, north of the wall, and then back here again. He climbed on the fucking dragon and fought. What kind of person climbs on a fucking dragon? A madman! What kind of person climbs on a fucking dragon?
Tormund forgot he also rode a dragon. Don't take him out of context. Why do y'all do this? Why do y'all do this? Why do y'all get on this bandwagon that you're all going to have this same formula of taking things out of context to foment rage so you get more views? How are y'all any better than Dan and Dave who cater to a specific market to get more views and to get more likes? It ended up backfiring on them. Get woke, go broke. They were in kind of the in the second phase of that movement, and they thought it might work to get woke with a show that already had an established fan base rather than starting from scratch, and it kind of backfired on them. But Tormund didn't say who rides on a dragon. His comment was he hopped on the back of a dragon and fought. He spit fire on motherfuckers from a dragon, and he's saying who does that. What the comment should be here is Tormund forgot that Daenerys also did that. Tormund didn't ride a dragon to fight. Tormund hitched a ride like fucking Lizard Uber to get away from the army of the dead. It's not the same thing. Clipping this out of context, oh man. I wish that I cared enough about these latter seasons to get mad, but I just think it's silly to take this out of context when you literally just played the clip before of him saying climbed on the back of a dragon and fought.
I mean, look at the whole Hodor reveal. This is one of the last things that was based on material directly provided by George, and it's so fucking weird and cool and creative. Like, Bran sends his mind back in time and, like, time splices young Hodor's mind.
It's cool. It's not creative at all. It is the standard causal loop template for time travel since the late 1700s science fiction shit. Literally, it is. Remember that scene in the Avengers where Hulk is trying to explain the time as the infinite number of lines that can jump off depending on where you stop in a timeline, and that the past doesn't affect the future? This is just a causal loop. This is the basic. The future is always written, and it happened because of the past. Time is a flat circle. Causal loop. It's not creative at all. It's what every single time travel property has ever done, except until we get up to newer shit like the Adventures that want to take a different approach at it. This is Michael J. Fox disappearing in the future based on what he does in the past. It's just a causal loop. Or disappearing in the past because of what he does. It's a causal loop. It's a causal loop. It's very simplistic stuff. It's very cool. I've never read it in how it was written, but how it came across on TV. It's very cool. Hodor. It's very cool. But it's just a causal loop. It's really, and I'm not knocking Martin with this, but it's the opposite of creative. It's how every single person ever has displayed time travel working.
So then he just damages his brain forever? I can't even explain it properly.
There's nothing to explain properly. It's just a causal loop. It's just a simplistic causal loop. In real life, that could happen is probably infinitely complex. But to explain how it plays out in fictional media, it is simply just a causal loop.
Conceptual and strange that I know these goobers didn't make it up themselves.
They couldn't have copied Back to the Future. Time Cop, Hot Tub Time Machine. They couldn't have copied any of that. The goobers that they are. I don't know their writing credits. I know the Weiss. Is that the DB or the Dave or the Dan or I don't know. I know the Weiss dude was one of the writers on It's Always Sunny for a while. I don't know what else they did. That's another show that's pretty much carried by its acting instead of its writing, you know. But anyway, I started blasting.
Unfortunately, the show just stopped being creative once they had to do it themselves. Before, it was a nuanced fantasy series that subverted your expectations in interesting ways.
Look, let me tell you something right the fuck now. There is nothing interesting about subverting one's expectations. You know what subverting means? People have expectations. You know, you can exceed someone's expectations. That's what y'all mean to say. You exceeded their expectations, or you challenged their expectations. Subvert is a very bad, underhanded way to put it. Subverting your expectations would be you order a pizza and you get a tuna melt. That's rage-inducing shit. Exceeding your expectations, hey, you get a whole lot of cheese and a whole lot more sausage on that sumbitch. Challenging your expectations, it's not changing the final product. Expectations are great for a show because that's what people watch the show for. They expect it to be good. When you say subverting the expectations, you're stealing away that expectancy from a person, and it ends up not being good. Subverting expectations is having Arya kill the Night King. Challenging your expectations and even maybe exceeding your expectations is the brilliance of having Robb Stark get killed in, was it season 3? The end of the Red Wedding. I guess it was probably the penultimate episode, because that's how they usually do.
The main character from Season 1 is your traditional fantasy protagonist. He's so righteous and good-natured that he almost solves all of the problems of the series right away. And you can't have that, so they kill him. One trope inversion that I've always loved is with revenge and how the series deals with it. In a traditional fantasy story, we're taught to root for characters that are driven by vengeance, because we see it as justice. You know, if you do something bad, you should be punished for it. But A Song of Ice and Fire takes this and twists it. Vengeful characters are almost always punished.
I'll kill them all. Every one of them. I'll kill them all.
We have to get the girls back.
But that's not unique either. The spaghetti westerns and movies from that particular genre would do that. You know, a man seeking revenge should dig 2 graves.
And then we will kill.
Though I guess, and like I say, I'm not throwing shade. I guess someone who watches the cartoon mangas or whatever he called them, and then a whole bunch of fantasy shows, probably has never consumed that type of media.
Kill them all.
They're usually blinded by their lust for revenge, and more often than not, they pay a steep price for it. Arya's whole deal in earlier seasons is about her wanting to exact her vengeance on the people that ruined her life, and it's kinda childish. Every character she interacts with tells her that her goal is stupid and that it's not worth it. And for most of her arc, it kinda looks like it's going to allow her to shed her old ways and give up on her petty quest. But then the writers kind of forgot what they were doing with her, and she becomes the fucking Punisher. She does eventually learn to give up on her quest.
Well, see, I'm not disagreeing with you here on how that's silly what they did with Arya. I'm disagreeing why they did it. They didn't not have any material. They don't suck that badly at writing. They Mary sued her. They saw the success. Say what y'all want about how many people badmouth the Star Wars. Were they reboots or just extensions of the franchise? There are movies that I'm not really into either. I've seen them, but I'm not really into them. But they were successful. They made a ton of money. Rey, Mary Sue, they Mary Suified Arya is what they did. She was getting her ass beat by the waif on a daily basis with a stick. Suddenly she's a pro and a sword and just goes and kills Brienne like 18 times before they end it in their sparring session in a draw. They Mary sued her is how they ruined her. Throughout the whole entire series, she was the furthest thing from a Mary Sue you could imagine. She failed. A lot of people didn't like her. Nothing came easy for her. She wasn't overpowered versus anyone. She gets smacked around and pushed around. Then suddenly she gets back in, I guess, the beginning of season 7, when she gets back, and she's suddenly Rey from the new Star Wars movies. That's literally who she is. She even pulls her hair back like her in one episode. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I think that's bad writing, and it is bad writing, and I'll agree with this dude that it's very bad writing, but it's not bad writing for lack of ideas. Their idea was, let's cater to this SJW market, who's Johnny Come Lately here, who's been calling our show all of these kind of mean, bad names. And every episode we do, there's 250 articles about how we're perpetuating rape culture. Let's cater to the same fans of this show that are fans of the Star Wars reboots because they love Rey, powerful woman character. In my humble opinion, and if I ever get a mind to do this sort of video, I'll illustrate it with, evidence by example of showing the clips. Men turned from the driving force of the show and the power to it turned to women are better and men serve as a plot device for stepping stones for their triumph, is what it turned into. That's not a lack of ideas. That's, we're going to take what's happening in the pop culture SJW trend right now and force it into Game of Thrones. And I have a sneaking suspicion that wasn't only Dan and Dave's call, but also HBO's call, because HBO's been going that way with it. Forgive me for the aside here. I know it's stretching the video out, but look what they're doing with that Tulsa thing. Look what they did with that in Watchmen. For 90 years, it was known that only 30 victims were claimed, and that it was a race riot. White people didn't show up to burn down Black Wall Street because they were jealous of the success. Am I saying this because I'm some horrible racist? I don't know. I think I'm saying it because that's what 90 years of evidence and countless investigations and reports reported on. That there was a skirmish there. Let's not get into it, but suffice to say that 30-some people died on both sides. But now that we're in SJW woke age, they just rewrite it as mean white Klansmen on the back of pickup trucks showed up and killed 1,800 black people and burned down Black Wall Street. And that's the kind of stuff that the SJWs eat up, because they want to retcon everything in existence with their modern morality, looking at things through the lens of race, sexuality, and gender. And this is to whom Dan and Dave, all right, I'm not going to say anything to get my channel banned, but, early life check.
But not because it's petty and wrong, but because everybody she wanted to kill is already dead. Everybody else is punished for vengeance, but Arya gets to walk away scot-free. In fact, almost every main character is ruined by the end of this show. Their personal stories become forgotten, and they kind of become the standard version of themselves. It's like the writers took the base qualities of each character and just used those for the rest of the show and decided they didn't want to write any more character arcs.
Well, yeah, because that's what I'm saying. There are no character arcs. There are no arcs at all in SJW storytelling. They don't go like this. It goes like this. It's a straight line up for women. For women, it's a straight line up. For men, it's a straight line down. Don't believe me? Think of every character of importance that took that straight line down. Jaime Lannister, boom, straight line down, back to his snooty, snobbish ways that, he's going to go break a woman's heart even. Let's show him as the bad guy again. Make him a bad guy. Jon Snow. Let's make him as useless as humanly possible. But Sansa Stark? No, let's rise her up to great importance and she's going to end up being Queen of the North. Arya Stark? No, let's rise her up to she's going to kill the Night King. Bran Stark? No, let's drop him down to literally a know-nothing and then a do-nothing king at the end. Even if you want to argue, but he got the highest power ever. He's going to be a do-nothing king. They completely unpersoned Bran Stark completely. Every guy dropped off precipitously. Every female rose up. Can I say precipitously for a rise? I don't know how that word works.
I honestly can't think of a single character that has a good arc in this season aside from Theon.
Well, Theon's arc isn't even good per se. He peaked and then went straight down to death. He didn't continue on the rise of his arc. He had his peak from season 7, where he talked to Jon, and Jon, I can't forgive you for all of it, but for what I can, I do forgive you. What are you still standing here talking to me for? And then he went out and got hit in his Ken doll groin where nothing's there, and then killed the dude. That was his arc peaking. Then when we got into season 8, his arc had peaked. His arc has peaked. Then as a male, he was entirely disposable. Jorah Mormont, as a male, entirely disposable. Beric Dondarrion, as a male, entirely disposable. What women died until the last episode when the mirror images of each other, Cersei and Daenerys died? En route to getting there, where are the women who had to perish? I know a lot of people complain, and so do I, especially about that Long Night episode, that most of the people should have died, but the people who did die were men. The women still had strength to accomplish. They still had a trajectory to go. Like I say, it's bad writing, but it wasn't a lack of idea. It was just the wrong idea that they were going to SJWify the series now.
Has also become incredibly stupid. I mean, just listen to the writers explain why Dany couldn't see the fleet of pirate ships before her dragon gets shot down by them.
While Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces.
They did. This is, I think they're lying through their teeth here just to excuse what was bad writing, when what they wanted to do, in my humble opinion, I could well be wrong, what they wanted to do was try to, in a 6-episode span, very quickly set up Dany's rage killing of everybody in King's Landing that she could find. I don't think that she forgot, because she was reminded like 19 times during the show about the Iron Fleet. They urged her not to go out on her own with the dragons because of the Iron Fleet. She forgot. They're lying here. They just don't want to admit what they did.
God? Yeah, the characters are all stupid. Every single one of them. It's like everybody dropped like 20 IQ points in these last 2 seasons.
Well, they did, and that's because there's no longer any character progression. There's no longer any character depth. See, I can see, like I say, I'm not making these reviews to trash anybody. I agree with Homeboy here. I just agree with him for different reasons. He thinks it's because they're just shit writers. I think it's because they wanted to cater to a different type of audience, show all the women as the most awesomesters, and then show all the men as just disposable and useless stepping stones for the triumph of women. Because you would think at least one motherfucker in character, male character, would get to keep their intelligence or something. You know, get to keep their bravado, get to keep their machismo, get to keep their heroic qualities. But none of them do. Varys turns stupid as hell, treason in broad daylight. Tyrion, he's just a mouth breather now. Jon Snow shouted at a dragon. What I thought was going to happen when I watched that in live time was after Melisandre brought him back. Is that the red bitch's name? Melisandre? After she brought him back at Castle Black in the second episode, or the first episode of season 6, whenever that happened, that he was going to be immune to fire now. So I wanted to see that. Then he beheads him with Longclaw or something. Or dragons genderless. See, they'll call dragons genderless now because that's SJW bullshit. You got a dick or a vagina, goddammit.
So let's go ahead and look at all the characters and how the writers fucked them up by the end of the show. Daenerys Targaryen. Alright, let's just get this girl out of the way early, because most people are probably here to watch me shit on her. Dany obviously suffers the most in this season. She goes from being a slightly petulant but confident young ruler to a megalomaniacal tyrant in just a few episodes.
I don't think it was just a few episodes, bro. I don't think so. This is the one part of season 8 that I didn't really disagree with, is that Dany becoming the Mad Queen. The season before, she burned Randall and Dickon Tarly. Dickon. It's not Rickon. Motherfucker, it's Dickon. God damn it, he'll show you too. That motherfucker's got a third leg. Don't fuck with him. Just burn them for not bending the knee. And the season before, killed motherfucker. Season before, she killed that young dude who, in her name, killed one of the sons of the Harpy. And just beheaded him in front of everybody, and that's when everybody started to... That's why I said very early on in this video that the sons of the Harpy killing Barristan Selmy and almost killing Grey Worm, and her not paying attention, was an integral part to the story for her becoming the Mad Queen, because now she's not going to let anybody live that's going to possibly come back on her. She learned that a couple of guys that she thought were just peons and not really threats actually almost wrecked her entire fucking world. Then almost killed her and her dragon in the fighting pits. And she's no longer going to do that. So I think the Mad Danny has been coming for a very, very long time, not just a couple episodes. I just don't see how one can conveniently leave out all of the other bad shit she's done to everybody up to this point. And how much vanity she has. How much vanity she has. It mirrors Cersei and the vanity that she had when she blew up the entire Sept of Baelor and killed untold hundreds or thousands of people. Her vanity for that. Her not even floating the idea that her and Jon could get married. Her not even floating the idea that the North could be an independent kingdom. Her believing that her birthright is the Iron Throne when it's really fucking not. It's Gendry's birthright. Your family dynasty got defeated by Robert Baratheon of the Stormlands. You're not the rightful ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. You're not even the breaker of fucking chains. Your dragons did that.
Yes, a few episodes. Now there are...
It wasn't a few episodes, Holmes. It wasn't a few episodes. You can't leave that out. You can't leave out what she did to the Tarleys. You can't leave out that she had Neharius Dario, fucking dude that was banging her, killed that boy. You can't omit that and pretend that all of the bad things she did just happened this season. You can't do that, bro.
A few people out there saying that her fall to the dark side was foreshadowed, and these people are not correct. Dany's...
Well, tell us how it's not correct that she was killing motherfuckers in previous seasons unprovoked. If that's not going to foreshadow... Look. How did we know that this murderer that we released from prison might murder more people? Oh, it's a shock. It's a shock to everybody. It just happened randomly. Oh, really? I would think that he is a proven murderer would foreshadow that he may in fact murder again. Dany murdering innocent, relatively innocent motherfuckers for no reason but to do it, to display her power. That's not foreshadowing that she might kill more innocent people. Again, this is why my postulate is that guys like this just say that shit because the book hasn't said it yet. If the book said it, they'd be in a masturbatory fantasy over this shit. Bottle of lotion and box of tissues over this shit. But because it was Dan and Dave who presumably did this, for all we know, they got notes from George R. R. Martin saying she did this. I want to hear him argue how it wasn't foreshadowed.
Fall to the dark side is more abrupt and jarring than Anakin Skywalker's. And somehow...
Look, I'll take your word on Anakin Skywalker because you've probably watched the prequels dozens of times. I've seen them once on Disney Plus. I don't think was it abrupt? Didn't he meet the Palpatine dude who was another name or something and nobody knew he was the Lord Sith in like the first episode ever, and then it progressed and progressed and progressed? I don't think there was anything necessarily abrupt about that. Didn't Anakin start having, probably implanted by the Lord Sith guy, that these visions of his family dying, and then he promised that he could keep his family, he could save his family's life? You know, the things we do for love.
She still has a higher body count than him. Daenerys' whole arc has been about her proving that she can break the cycles of the world. You know that...
No, bull fucking shit. Bull fucking shit. I'm calling your ass out on this. That's been her fucking words, not her actions. Her lines have been that she's going to break the wheel. She's never tried to break the wheel. She's tried to make it so that she's dictator for life. If anything, she is the worst version ever of Julius Caesar and Joseph Stalin had a baby. She says she wants to break the wheel, but all she wants to do is eliminate the competition. She's Baratheon, Lannister, Stark, on and on it rolls. She wants to be Targaryen, on it for life. That's not breaking the will. That's breaking the world. Motherfucker.
The name Breaker of Chains is supposed to be literal and figurative. She wants to break the cycle of her family line. Her dad and brother were fucking nut jobs, and she wants to prove that she can be a powerful ruler without...
That's not what she's trying to break. She tells you what she's trying to break. She tells you what she's trying to break. She wants a Targaryen on the throne. She thinks it's her birth. How is she breaking the will? How is she any different from her father and her brother when her entire claim to the throne, giving herself all these fancy fucking names, is the fact that she was born a Targaryen? She was just born like this. She calls it her birthright. She is everything plus 10 that she claims to not want to be. But you say that's not foreshadowing that she's going to be a mad lad?
being a tyrant. She knows that Westeros has been at war for a long time and that the people ruling the land have been corrupt and evil. She wants to prove that the land can thrive under the right person.
No, again, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. That's what they was talking to her about in earlier seasons about staying in Essos. Because Westeros doesn't have slavery anymore. The Baratheons and Starks of the world did that. Is it as unjust as what Essos was? No, Essos is still going through shit. The Dothraki raid and pillage and murder motherfuckers. They don't have anybody but the hill people that do that over in Westeros. They still got millions of slaves over there that are going to fall back into slavery, especially now that she's dead. But then after she left, anytime they can get a chance to do it, the masters come back and put them back in chains. If she wants a better world, she's going to stay in Essos. She don't want a better world. She wants her birthright. That's the entire crux of her character in the show. How you miss that is just boggles my mind.
She wants to end the cycle of suffering that everybody...
No, she doesn't. She's a white liberal. She wants to be carried around by the people of color as their liberator. There are none of those in Westeros that need to carry her around like that. They're all in Essos. She wants to go to Westeros because she's a tyrant, motherfucker.
He's been experiencing. Yeah, they totally fucked her up. Now, I'll be honest, I never really liked Daenerys. Part of the reason...
She's the one they didn't fuck up. I'm going to let this play for a couple minutes, and I might edit it out later as, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to use a whole lot of this dude's material, just the pieces that I'm either agreeing or disagreeing with, but, you know, nature calls.
That I never finished the rest of the books is because I hate enjoying a chapter and then turning the page and seeing this shit. She's the most boring character to follow, but that doesn't mean I wanted her arc to get thrown in the dumpster. She goes from being normal, confident, strong Daenerys in one episode, to being kinda sad that nobody in Westeros is her friend, to killing countless innocent people. That's a pretty drastic jump, if we're being honest. Now, the current theory is that George told D&D that this is what was gonna happen to Daenerys by the end of the story. And honestly, I'm on board with that.
It wasn't a jump, it was a progression. And what did I say? What did I say earlier? I've never seen this before. That he heard it was George, now he's on board with it. You can't make this shit up. It wasn't a jump, it was a progression. Notice how in his montage of Dany, he doesn't show that she not only strung those masters up on the pole like they did the kids as a vengeance ploy. That's not justice, that's vengeance. Unless you agree every single person that murders here in the Western world should get the death penalty the same way. But she wouldn't even let them pull them down for proper fucking burials. My man.
I think that's the case. But if that is the case, they should have known to actually cultivate this arc from long before this. Because as it stands, it comes out of nowhere.
At this point, I think you're just trying to pretty much do what Dan and Dave do, just to... What the fuck, phone? Just to a lesser extent, and that you're trying to play a little bit to the outrage and the shock and awe mob here by completely omitting. You completely omit everything that she did unless you're getting to it here. I don't want to judge you. You might be getting to that.
Speak louder than words, and Dany has always talked a lot of shit, but her actions are completely separate. Threatening your enemies with fire and blood is way different than killing innocent people indiscriminately. If your only example of her having a dark streak is that she executes people who betray or disobey her, well, I got news for you. Every fucking character does that in this world.
Jano Slint was trying to plot the downfall of Jon Snow for many seasons. Plus, he was a backhanded sumbitch who betrayed his father down in King's Landing, or the man he thought was his father, Ned Stark. And he probably held a grudge on that. And most people will say, you know, hey man, that's pretty fucking extreme. A couple people cheered for it, like me, because I hated Jano Slint. But I saw all kinds of videos saying, for Jon Snow, that's pretty extreme, and they probably only did that to get the callback that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword.
Does it all the time. The first lesson that the series teaches us in the very first episode is that if you are an authority figure, it's your responsibility to do what you gotta do, even if that means carrying out an execution.
But see, the thing is, you're setting up this thing where it's falsely analogous, because nobody's saying it's right that they do this. And especially with Jon suffers with this. It tears Jon up that he's had to execute men. And these motherfuckers killed him, so I don't want to hear nothing about that. But it tears Jon up that he's had to execute men. Dany, it just feeds her. And they even talk about it in the show. They have a lot of dialogue about it. Varys and Tyrion, that each time she does it, like the Mad King, they feel more justified in doing it. It was completely mirroring the Mad King, and Varys and Tyrion were there every step along the way to provide the dialogue for hard of head motherfuckers who just want to pretend that didn't exist.
This act is never shown as a bad thing in this series, ever. So no, I do not accept it as foreshadowing for her turning evil, when at this point it's basically a societal norm. Now yeah, if you really wanted to
Hold on,
make
now
her
you're saying it's a society norm. I thought you're saying she was supposed to be the one who isn't the society norm. She's supposed to be the breaker of chains. She's supposed to be the one who reinvents the world in a better image. Now let's forgive her because she's just practicing society norms. You got to make up your mind, buddy. Make up your mind. Now, again, I'm not trying to fault this dude because he's got a big audience, so he's obviously doing this stuff. If I didn't have an ad blocker on here, he'd have probably had 25 ads playing in here already, in a sponsorship somewhere. So I'm not breaking his balls for that per se, but you're just completely contradicting yourself now. That you just held her up 2 minutes ago as to be the shining example, the epitome of someone who was better than the normalcy of the brutality of the world. Now she's just playing along in it as just one of the players. You can't have it both ways, my man.
evil, it's totally doable. The seeds are there, but they haven't grown into something that's convincing. As far as we know, based on everything...
Convincing. It's like talking to people who, as I am a former practicing evolutionary biologist, research scientist, a lot of people who follow me know this, even though I don't have a lot of people who follow me. It's like trying to convince people who don't believe in evolution, and you give them example after example after example, and they say, I'm not convinced. Therefore, argument over. Hey, bro, it's your world. I'm just living in it.
That the show has actually shown us from her, she's been nothing but kind and benevolent when it comes to innocent people. I also want to point out that Stannis only killed one innocent child, and every viewer of the show hated him for it. He was seriously the most hated character on the show, and yes, this is the same show that has this fucking kid.
I'm not tired!
A lot of people are saying, oh, well, since she got to Westeros, her friends have died and nobody likes her.
Okay.
Arya has lost more family and friends than Daenerys, and she isn't a mass murderer. Okay, well, she kind of is.
She kind of is, bro. She kind of is a mass murderer. What the fuck? I hope you did this for humor. And I appreciate that you got to at least the honesty to correct yourself here and show it.
But in a different way. This is some of the most blatant character assassination that I've ever seen on a TV show.
I'm not disagreeing that it wasn't character assassination, but if you're going to say that the seeds weren't laying, they were giving you the exposition dialogue every step along the way. Even Barristan Selmy gave it to you. when he was talking to her about real justice and how it made the Mad King feel more powerful and more right. She fell into that exact same fucking trap. We hear the story from Jaime Lannister about how the Mad King just was burning people who betrayed him, burning people who were trying to overthrow him. Hey, according to you, that's the normalcy of the world. Then when the day Jaime Lannister killed him, when Tywin Lannister brought the Lannister army to the gates, who had teamed up with the Baratheons and the Starks and everybody in the Vale, when they came to the gates of King's Landing, he commanded, burn them all, burn them all, burn them all. All the innocent people. That's a big jump, right? Because all he did was kill a couple people before. Just a couple. They had seeds, but they hadn't grown.
And it's no wonder why everybody immediately turned on the show after this moment. It's not just because women and children are being toasted by our main character.
Well, in my opinion, this lends more credence to my postulate that Dan and Dave, the bad writers that they are, didn't make a lazy choice here. They made a calculated SJW choice. As you notice here, every man just has this unbridled bloodlust. Even the Northerners, who you think would be more tame under the leadership and tutelage to an extent of a Jon Snow, have to try to rape women so badly that they'll try to kill their king to rape a woman. This is showing toxic masculinity.
Really care that something upsetting is happening. It's Game of Thrones. Nobody really gives a shit about that. The problem is that we're being told that this is a genuine character arc when it's really not. In fact, I can go ahead and fix most of these problems with just one solution. If you completely removed the bells of surrender, then the scene would make a little more sense.
I'm not going to show a lot of this because likely is the case I'm going to agree with everything dude says about Bran Stark, because I believe they totally slaughtered Bran Stark.
He becomes the most powerful being in the entire world, but all he does is sit around and make people feel bad. In fact, the whole last episode feels like that. It doesn't really feel like the finale at all. It really feels like they just so desperately wanted to get to this point, and it doesn't feel earned. It just don't feel right.
What it felt like to me was a filler episode. I felt like I was watching a filler episode. I felt like, oh my God, they're going to subvert our expectations by having a secret episode next week that was just Bran's vision of the future or something. That's like, please God, let that be true. Jon Snow, again, I'll probably agree with most of the things he says about Jon Snow here, because they really killed Jon Snow. Now look. I understand the argument that they don't want the same old hero trope time and again, but if you don't want that, don't set it up from the very first season that this is the hero of the story. Don't set it up that this is Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised, whatever you want to call him. Don't set it up that him and this Night King had this epic showdown, stare down, throw down, hoe down at the fucking Po Town about him going to fight him at the end. Don't set that shit up. That's why I say subverting expectations is a horrible term. They should do away with it in the common lexicon.
As you probably noticed, this show suffers from moving way too quickly. And this is a problem that these writers have. They write the ending, and then the characters just start shifting around it so they can just get to that ending. And this might work in a movie, but in a slow-paced show like Game of Thrones, it does not work. And that's why Jon and Dany don't work.
Well, I think you're onto something here. I think once they got to season 7, to me, the cinematography even changed a little bit to where they were trying to make a mini movie for every show. Every show was like a mini movie, and it did. I agree with you here. They rushed shit. They brought all the pieces that would inevitably have to come together, but they kind of rushed them together. It's like, you're playing speed chess in the park, but all you know how to play is checkers.
Second that they meet,
you just jump a motherfucker, I mean.
They have that.
I skipped over a lot of these because I agree with him on the killing the characters. That's something I can agree with this dude on, is the fact that they just slaughtered the characters. We just disagree with the purposes of why they did it. So I'm going to start up here again on Arya Stark, which I think I'm going to disagree with him a little bit here because I don't think he would agree with my take on why they bungled her character so badly.
Because I used to really like Arya. Now she stands as a shining example of what I don't like about what this series has become. She's the only character that the rules don't apply to. I'm watching all the main characters struggling and fighting for their lives, and then there's a hard cut to this shit. So many people love Arya, and I legitimately feel like an asshole whenever I complain about her, because it's hard.
I'm telling you, just watch it again with this in mind. Arya Stark was Arya Stark from the point we first met her in Winterfell, shooting the arrow when Bran couldn't aim, to the point that she held the sword to Jack and Hagar and said, I am Arya Stark of Winterfell and I'm going home, or however she said it. She was Arya Stark. Upon getting back to Westeros, she became Rey, no last name, eventually Skywalker. Quite fucking literally. I mean, maybe Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams were consultants on this for D&D, because she's Rey Skywalker here, plain and simple.
To argue these points without looking like a neckbeard, but I just don't really think this superpowered version of her fits the story. From the end of Season 1 into Season 2, she decides, I'm gonna be a badass, and I'm gonna learn how to fight, and I'm gonna kill the people I don't like. And that's just her character for the entire show. She just makes a decision, and then the world supports that decision, and then that's just what happens to her. And I don't really like using the term plot armor, but when I see her get stabbed in the gut multiple times, and then just walk it off,
I can agree with you. I don't like the term plot armor either. I especially don't like the term plot armor in a show in which it is implied inside of the universe that a deity that can bring you to life and that can control what you do is a real thing. Like, if the Lord of Light can bring somebody back to life, the Lord of Light can thus then keep somebody alive. So that is always there, so that the writers want to give plot armor. Or maybe one could argue that they use that as the plot armor, but that is something that exists in this universe. I wish somebody would come up with another name for it. Like, whenever Republicans win an election or Democrats win the election, vice versa, somebody will say, that's a refutation against the former's policies. Come up with a different fucking better word, because it might just be people are tired of the same old and they're not necessarily refuting it. They're just, want something different. I want something different to eat on my ketogenic diet than the fathead dough pizza I make a lot. I'm not refuting that. I just want something different, lad.
there's kind of a problem there. When King's Landing is being completely destroyed and Arya's the only person who survives, then I start to see a problem. She teleports from place to place, she doesn't give a fuck about anybody, and she's just too strong. She manages to sneak past all the zombies and all of the Night King's generals, and then she just jumps his ass and shanks him. He dies faster than them. They could have just sent Arya to kill Cersei after this. There's no...
It's almost kind of like a girl who's never even heard of the Force before can use it better than someone who's practiced it, with fucking Luke Skywalker of all people, or never held a lightsaber before, but can beat someone who's was also trained by Luke Skywalker to use a lightsaber. It's almost like that, is it not?
reason to believe that Arya would have had any trouble with it. Just sneak Arya into the city, let her disguise herself as a maid or something, and then just have her stab Cersei. You guys have Batman on your payroll and you don't even care. All of these characters completely lose their sense of reason. And at this point, these people are only alive because they have cunning resilience. They're only here because they're smart, but the show just forgot that they were. So we have a merry
Again, the show didn't forget that they were. The show tried to do something different. Now hear me out. Hear me out. Feel free to disagree, but just hear me out. They have been trying for the past 5, 6, 7 years to make all this woke media garbage. The problem is, when they started from scratch, that's where the get woke go broke thing kind of really is exemplified as, you know, a statement of fact. Because the girl Batman sucks and fans hate it. The new Star Wars, though it made a ton of money and had a relatively good fan base, the Star Wars fan base just fucking hated it. But this has an established fan base, and it hasn't been 30 years since they made a movie or a show. So what they tried to do is take an established fan base and then switch it to all these woke talking points. They made the show woke. It doesn't come across as woke necessarily, because nobody in here has become transgender and nobody has dyed their hair pink, but it's still the men are now all awful, horrible, or useless. And the women are now all overpowered and have their reasons for being the most powerful, because reasons. It's the show got woke is what happened to it.
And of dumbasses that have been leading the show for a few seasons now. And a lot of people look at season 7 when they bring up how the show lost its mojo. Adult Swim even had a eulogy for the show after its climax episode, and for good reason. This is where the show really started going down a path that it could not recover from. In the climax episode of season 7, the characters come up with the dumbest plan I've ever heard. The good guys know that the dumb ice zombies are coming to kill everybody really.
That was a dumb plan, and I remember this was the show that was leaked early, and I went ahead and got it from that place that is like sort of an ocean but not an ocean, and they're kind of privateers but not privateers. I got it from that place. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. I really don't know at this point. But I thought for sure that when they were planning this, that they would just say, Danny would say, I got 3 dragons, and we got armies. Let's go fight the Night King on his turf before he breaks through the wall and takes over, the southern territories and gets more to his army. Let's just go blast them with dragon fire, and let's go up there and march on them and fight them. I really thought that was going to be the climax for all of season 7, and then like the first 3 episodes of season 8 were going to be them in some kind of guerrilla warfare or sporadic asymmetrical warfare up there beyond the wall. I really thought that's where it was going, so I was really disappointed when it didn't go there, when they just made this stupid plan. Here's another thing other than going woke that I think hurt the show. Dan and Dave rested very much on nostalgia, because you can say that's a dumb plan. That's a dumb plan. But what have been some of the more popular themes of the show? Jorah Mormont and his relationship or lack thereof with Ned Stark, and that's why he was in Essos, because he got ran out of there. Or the Hound and Thoros with their dialogue that was ongoing. I'll tell you what I'm not afraid of. Bald cocksuckers like you, man. And so they really tried to play on nostalgia here, where it wasn't that long ago since we've seen Game of Thrones or these characters to need the nostalgia, but they rested on all of these characters coming together like fan service or something. That was the more intriguing part of that episode, where they had that stupid plan, is that, the Hound insulting Gendry, Jon showing Jorah Longclaw, and then Jorah giving it back. May it serve you well, and your children after you. And then that gives you a big thing of, oh, Dany must be pregnant. But yeah, the plan was fucking stupid.
Soon, so they have to convince evil Lex Luthor to aid them in the battle. But she doesn't believe in zombies, so their genius plan is to go far north, grab a zombie, and bring it back to her to prove that they're real. When I watched this episode a couple years ago, I realized that this show has really lost its marbles. So when the final season began, I was a little more critical of it than others. Episode 1 came out and it was kinda slow and nothing really happened. And everybody told me, hey man, it's the first episode, give it a break. Then the Battle of Winterfell happens and other people start seeing the problems too.
Well, they really tried to carry, in my opinion, the first show again on nostalgia and these big shock moments of having all of these reunions, and they all fell flat. I think it was in the middle of season 6 when Brienne brings Sansa, Brienne and Theon. No, Theon had went back at that point. That's right. Brienne and Podrick bring Sansa to Castle Black, and Jon and Sansa, who weren't really ever that close, had that, and it was very touching, and that was a better reunion than any of them have had since then. And the Hound and Arya's reunion was just kind of shitty, and that's kind of something that killed the Hound's arc too, was just having him revert back to this mean asshole who wants revenge on his brother and don't give a fuck about everybody, when we know he does give a fuck about people.
episode is like dark as hell. You can't see what's happening. The main characters somehow are totally invincible and can't die. The big evil dragon that blew a hole in the wall last season doesn't even prove to be a threat anymore. He can't even melt the rock that Jon Snow is hiding behind. Daenerys manages to destroy an entire city later in the season, but in this episode, she can't really do anything against the zombies. She just can't beat them. You're telling me that this shit wouldn't have worked on the zombies? I mean, give me a fucking break.
Yeah, it's definitely inconsistencies here. It's definitely inconsistencies, but they stopped producing the show for its intrigue, for its consistency, for its continuity, for its logic, for its reason. Again, just my opinion. They took an established show with an established fan base, and then they tried to please the SJW come latelys with it, who don't care about any of this stuff. SJWs aren't going to make a video talking about, isn't it crazy how the dead zombie dragon can't get through a little piece of rock, but Dany's dragon can tear down the Tower of the Hand in one fell swoop? No, they're going to talk about, isn't it patriarchal how Daenerys Targaryen is displayed here, and it perpetuates rape culture and white supremacy of how she still has to be subservient, and the only reason that she lashed out was because it's a statement against the patriarchy, that she's now fed up with the way men have treated her entire life. And while a few innocent men and women, well, not men, but while a few innocent women and children had to die, that is nothing compared to the statement that it makes against the heteronormative patriarchy of white supremacy in this world that is pushed by men who would abuse this woman and cause her to do that. That's the audience they targeted.
Plus, much like last season, our main characters decide that they're not done coming up with dumb plans. In the episode before the Battle of Winterfell, the characters decide that their plan to defeat the Night King is to leave Bran out in the open, lure the Night.
What bothers me about this plan the most it is implied a little loosely throughout the past two seasons that Bran can also get glimpses of the future and tell at least an approximation of how things might go. So, insofar as Bran knew this was the future coming, how many tens of thousands of people did he let die for this, when it could have just been him out there sitting in the wheelchair, maybe a couple people to protect him? Dig some moats and get your fortifications right so they can't get into Winterfell in the first place and are forced to go into the Godswood, and then have Arya. Because the little whites that were coming in there, they were coming in there to kill the Ironborn to clear the way for the Night King. The Night King was always going to be the one to take Bran out himself. He wasn't going to have a White Walker do it, and he wasn't going to have a basic low-level white do it. It was going to be him that did it. So if Bran... Anyways, I don't know.
Night King out, and then they literally never say what the plan is, which causes me to not give a shit about what happens for an hour and a half because I knew everything was going to be fine anyway.
I think we might live.
Holy shit, he was right. The biggest threat...
Yeah, I agree with you here. There were no stakes. There were no consequences. When they decided to SJWify the show, they took away all the consequences, especially for the women. The only consequences that meet the women meet the women in the very, very, very tail end of the season. Cersei's consequences and Daenerys' consequences were very light. They were very light compared to some men's consequences. Dany died almost instantly. Cersei got knocked in the head with some rubble. They didn't have to be shamed and dragged and brutally murdered like some of the men had to be.
In the series gets killed by Arya, and I always thought that the Night King was going to be defeated by something a little less traditional. Some people were mad that Arya killed him because they wanted Jon Snow to do it, and I don't really agree with that either. The Night King should not have been defeated by a normal person with a sword. If it was that easy, then he probably would have been dead.
You know, I disagree with this, not for like reasons that are important to anyone but me. But what I always liked seeing in Game of Thrones, because like I say, I'm not a fan of the dragons anyways. I'm not a fan of the magic anyways. I always liked the idea of single combat. When Jon challenged Ramsay to single combat, I was so pissed off that they didn't have a single combat. I wanted a scenario where Jon beats Ramsay Bolton in single combat, but then Little John Umber claims control and still wages war, and we could have still had a battle. It just wouldn't be Battle of the Bastards. I always liked single combat. That scene where the White Walker has his ice spear and he hits Longclaw, and that face he makes, and then when Jon shatters him, man, that was epic. I think that was in Hardhome. That was epic, man. Epic. Yeah, so me, like I say, this isn't anything I'm griping and complaining about. Just my little personal pet peeve here. I would have loved to seen a one-on-one fight with Jon Snow. And you know what? Let Jon Snow die. Let Jon Snow die there. Or let Jon Snow get injured and can't kill the Night King. Let him lose to the Night King. And that's fine. But at least we see the payoff of that. And then have Arya come up when everybody's paying attention to the one-on-one fight. Then have Arya come up and stab him in the heart. Then have Arya be the one who saved the day. But to completely remove Jon Snow from the story entirely, to where all he did in that whole episode was just run around wildly slashing Longclaw every once in a while, and then miraculously having zombies disappear or just completely stand still in the distance and just let him get away. Then he stood up and shouted at a dragon. Let them fight. This is why I say I hate the idea of subverting expectations, man. You know, you went to Kentucky Fried Chicken to get a bucket of chicken, not a double cheeseburger. You opened a bucket and it's a bunch of double cheeseburgers. Hey, I just subverted your expectations. Hey, I just pissed all over your fucking front door.
A long time ago. I personally wanted something more creative to happen. I thought Bran was gonna do some weird shit or something. He always has that shitty look on his face like he knows what's gonna happen. I don't know, I just expected something. Think about it. Why was the Night King even in this story? What narrative purpose does he serve? Tell me one reason. One thing they contributed to the finale of this show.
I can, and I agree with you entirely here. Especially since the very first opening scene of the show are the Whites and the White Walkers. The very first scene. We always knew it was coming. The reason the Wall episode happened, I think that was in season 4, because then wasn't Hardhome in season 5. So yeah, I think the Wall, where the whole episode was the battle on the Wall. The only reason they're fighting Mance Rayder and the Wildlings is because the Wildlings demand to be away from the army of the dead. The overarching huge galaxy-shattering implications of the Night King and the army of the dead were just completely destroyed in season 8 when they just dropped that. But like I say, it was in service of the SJW Come Lately fans. It was to please them. They didn't care about the army of the dead. They said, the very people who, I used to make Game of Thrones videos, and I gained like close to 1,000 subscribers. Oh my God, I got a low rent channel. I'm nowhere near this dude. This dude's, got all kinds of subscribers and viewers, so I'm not trying to compare myself in that way. But I used to make Game of Thrones videos, and I did a couple popular videos. I think my Jack and Hagar got 250,000 views, and then a couple I got 50, 60,000 views, and I amassed a few subscribers. And for me, that's bigly. But I'd always have somebody in my comment section saying, you can't say cunt. You can't make racial jokes. You can't play the Metallica song of Master of Puppets while Sansa's being raped. And I'm like, y'all watch this. Y'all buy those little fat head toys and posters and shit and put them in your room. Y'all pretend to worship this show. Y'all should be the ones who aren't watching the show. Speaking of the SJW types, the woke culture types. This is the type of entertainment they should avoid. The first primary audience for this show were the book readers, of which there were a few. Obviously, I'm taking jokey jabs at this guy, saying he didn't read the books. For all I know, he had an entire library of nothing but George R. R. Martin shit, whatever. But that was the first audience. Was like a mixture of people like me who loved HBO shows. Oz, The Sopranos, The Wire. Loved HBO shows. Since I was a kid, Tales from the Crypt. Loved what HBO put out, their entertainment. And then the people who actually knew what the show was. And then, some interested parties. That was the main fan base for like the first 2 seasons. Then the shock and awe crowd started rolling in once they realized that the show did some shock and awe and it gained more interest. That was the second layer of the audience. Then we got the hipsters. The hipsters love coming along, and they're the ones I was speaking about earlier when I talk about fucked in book readers. I'm talking about the hipster types. I mean, give them a name if you don't agree that they're hipsters. That's what I'm going to call them for the sake of speaking here. that the ones who demand to be know-it-alls, so they read all of the books before they jumped in, in the show with both feet. And then that was another layer of the audience. Then the SJWs, the woke culture, they came late to the party, but yet took over on the entire pop culture of the internet of being the show's most ardent critics and its biggest fans. Here's the one thing they do right about women in the patriarchy, and here are the 285,000 things they do wrong. And this is what the show ended up catering to at the end of the day, is those late to the party, small minority woke fans. And like I say, I think that's a lot because HBO got bought up in the midst of all this, and HBO has been going woke hand over fist. It's really painful now to see just how woke HBO is getting.
If you remove the White Walkers entirely from this last season, the last 2 episodes do not change at all. Now I know for a fucking fact that George is gonna do things at least a little differently. The White Walkers are the first thing you see in the whole series. Both the book and the show start with ice zombies. So I like to think they're pretty fucking important. But as far as the show's concerned, they just had no idea what to do with them. We just rush past the biggest threat in the realm so we can rush past our main character turning evil, and then we rush her getting punished for it, and then the show just ends. I don't even feel like I watched the ending of this show. It was so unsatisfying. To me, this series
I can agree with you entirely there. And that's a good word for it. That's a good way to put it. Unsatisfying, anticlimactic, left me wanting not only something more. The prior seasons when they ended leave you wanting something more. This show when it ended left you wanting something different. That's a big difference.
Been about breaking tradition. Or breaking cycles, as I stated before. The series itself is supposed to break traditions of fantasy storytelling. A story where a hero may die, where you might find yourself rooting for people who do bad things. In a series that pushed the idea that there are no good guys or bad guys, we now have characters that are very obviously good and evil. People are already comparing this to the ending of Lost, but in Lost, every character got a fate that was satisfying, and completed their arcs in meaningful ways. And pretty
Well, yeah, the arcs were completed in meaningful ways. The reason that they were all there to begin with is what most people had a problem with. A fucking cave light. And the whole last season being, instead of their past clips or how everything ties in, being about they were in heaven or purgatory or somewhere in some kind of afterlife, spurred by Desmond when he viewed it all, I guess, and he died when they put him in that electromagnetism thing or whatever. Lost just got wild. And I just watched Lost again recently because it was on Hulu. I think I want to say 4 or 5 months ago I went ahead and rewatched Lost. That ending wasn't near as bad as this ending.
soon they're gonna...
And for people who talk about this now being desert, that doesn't look like desert to me. What I think they're trying to pull off here is that winter has come and the green pastures, all the grass has died because winter is now here. And we even see, I don't know if it's ash or, I think it is snow that we see in when John finds Drogon outside of the, I guess it's the Red Keep, when he goes in there and kills Dany and there's so much snow. I think what they're trying to convey here is that winter is here. I just don't think the people that they had designed the sets realized what dead grass looks like and frozen ground looks like compared to a fucking white sand desert. So they just kind of fucked it up there. But again, why, if you're interested about pleasing SJWs, do you care what the cinematography looks like? What you care what the backdrop looks? You don't care about consistency or continuity. What you care about now, if you're HBO and you're Dan and Dave catering to this new audience, is how people are going to react when Masunde Teacher Good gets fucking decapitated by the mountain. That's what you're worried about here. So they just were lax on so many different things in service of this new fan base, in my opinion.
To be a lot of think pieces about how this way of storytelling is genius because it subverts your expectations. And that's dumb. Let's be real, that's stupid. Because there's a way to subvert your
You just, oh, well, I'll let you finish the point because I think you're going to go ahead and speak in favor of subverting expectations. I don't like that term at all. I don't like that idea at all. Learn what subvert means. To subvert expectations is a fucking bad thing.
Expectations in a clever way, and this series has done it before. But now we're at...
If you cleverly do it, it's not a subversion. If you cleverly differentiate what the product you deliver relative to the expectations one had, you have exceeded their expectations. You have changed their expectations. Subversion is a bad word. With this guy happening to be on screen when I say subversion, please YouTube, don't ban me.
at a time where the writers think you're just supposed to do the opposite of what you expect, and that's not how you're supposed to write a story.
You know, if you've planned your book that the butler did it, and then you read on the internet, someone has figured out that the butler did it, and you suddenly change in midstream and it was the chambermaid who did it, then you screw up the whole book.
We hope to kind of avoid the expected, and Jon Snow has always been the hero, the one who's been the savior, but it just didn't seem right to us for this moment.
So if you watch this series...
Again, though, in my humble opinion, and I could well be wrong, I've been wrong about a lot of stuff before in my life, and you know what? Water still tastes good and the sky still pours down rain. You don't have to be right about everything in life. I think they're lying here because they're just trying to avoid saying what they did. They made the last 2 seasons of the show, especially the final season, to cater to an entirely different type of audience that does not give one single shit about male character arcs or continuity or consistency or quality. What they care about is the identity of the characters and how they can vicariously relate to that. All they care about. That's to whom they're catering now. That's what killed Game of Thrones.
And you felt disappointed like me, I guess you shouldn't be too upset, because after all, you do have multiple hundreds of pages of good stuff that you can enjoy. I mean, that's what I'm gonna do now. And I'm sure in a few years we'll get the official, canonical ending. And then maybe like 10 years after that, we'll get a new series on a streaming service or something. And it'll be called A Song of Ice and Fire, the true adaptation. We'll get our Game of Thrones Brotherhood. And then this series will just be seen as the weird fan fiction that it is.
Well, that's what it turned into. This was fun. This was fun. Depending on how long it takes to edit this, and depending on if these guys get ass hurt over this and start reporting me for copyright infringement, which I'm pretty sure this falls under fair use. I don't know why it would. And I'm going to try to edit out as much stuff as I can and only address the points that I want to address, so I'm not just outright stealing their fucking material here. But it is transformative in the sense that I'm critiquing and reviewing the review. And if these don't get popular, they don't get popular. I mean, I'm not a popular YouTuber. It is what it is. But I had fun doing this. I agreed with the guy on a lot, and I disagreed with the guy on a lot. And it's a good video, well put together. It wasn't boring. I enjoyed watching it, and I enjoyed listening to the guy. And obviously, he don't need this from me. There's no way that I can possibly boost him, but I will link his channel in the video down below in respect of me using this man's video to make this review of his review. So if y'all like this, you know, holler at me, shout at me, call me a motherfucker, make fun of my accent. I've heard it all before. Jesus Christ. I made a Jack in the Car video and people were literally leaving me death threats because they disagreed with my tongue-in-cheek video that he was the many-faced God. So, you know, but I mean, I might make more of these. What I'll do is I'll type something into the search engine and I'll find a popular video so I can punch up, and you know, I might find one where I agree with everything everybody says and I just reinforce their points, and I might find one where I disagree. Anyways, it's been fun.